Liberalism. Liberalism is built around one central idea. The individual should be protected from excessive power. To understand liberalism, you have to understand the world it reacted against. For most of history, power was concentrated. Kings ruled by birth. Religion dictated behavior. The state decided what you could say, believe, or own. Liberalism emerged as a response to that. Its basic question was simple: what if the individual came first? Liberalism argues that people should be free to make choices about their own lives as long as they do not harm others. It assumes that freedom is not chaos, but a condition for progress. This is why liberalism emphasizes freedom of speech, freedom of belief, individual rights, equality before the law, limits on government power. Under liberalism, the law is supposed to protect people from authority, not serve it. What liberalism does well is containing power. By limiting what governments can do, it reduces abuse. By protecting expression, it allows ideas to compete. By treating citizens equally under the law, it prevents privilege by birth. This creates space for innovation, for disagreement, for personal responsibility. But liberalism makes a strong assumption. It assumes that if everyone is free, outcomes will be fair enough. In reality, people start from very different positions. Some inherit wealth, some inherit stability, others inherit nothing. Liberalism protects freedom, not equality. It accepts unequal outcomes as the price of individual liberty. In simple terms, liberalism prioritizes freedom first and trusts society to handle the consequences. Conservatism begins with a different concern. Change can break things faster than it fixes them. Conservatism is often misunderstood as opposition to progress. That is not accurate. Conservatism does not reject change. It questions speed. Its core belief is that societies are complex systems built over time. Traditions, institutions, and norms exist because they solved problems in the past, even if we don't fully understand how. Conservatives ask a simple question before reforming something. What is this currently doing that we might lose? This is why conservatism emphasizes tradition, family structures, social stability, gradual reform, institutional continuity. Conservatism values what has worked before, not because it is perfect, but because it has been tested. What conservatism does well is preserving order. It maintains social cohesion. It slows down radical experiments. It protects institutions that hold societies together. This caution can prevent unintended consequences. But conservatism also has a weakness. By defending tradition, it can defend outdated systems. It can preserve inequality simply because it is familiar. It can resist reforms that are necessary, not risky. Change delayed too long becomes stagnation. In simple terms, conservatism prioritizes stability first and accepts slower progress as the cost. Capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system based on one main principle: people exchange value voluntarily in markets. In capitalism, individuals own property. They create goods or services. They sell them to others. Prices are not decided by the state. They emerge from supply and demand. Capitalism assumes that when people pursue their own interests, markets organize efficiently. No one plans the entire system. Yet food is produced, technology spreads, cities function. What capitalism does well is coordination. Millions of independent decisions align without central control. Resources flow to where demand exists. Innovation is rewarded. Capitalism adapts quickly. It responds to change. It scales globally. This is why capitalism generates wealth faster than any previous system. But capitalism does not ask one important question: is the outcome fair? Markets reward efficiency, not equity. Those who start with more resources gain advantages. Those who fail fall faster. Capitalism does not correct inequality on its own. It amplifies it. Left unchecked, it can lead to exploitation, monopolies, and instability. In simple terms, capitalism maximizes production, not justice. Socialism. Socialism begins where capitalism struggles. Its core question is simple: who benefits from economic activity? Socialism argues that when production is privately owned, wealth concentrates. Workers create value, owners capture most of it. This imbalance over time destabilizes society. Socialism proposes collective control over key resources. This can take different forms: state ownership, public management, cooperatives. The goal is not absolute equality, the goal is economic security. Socialism emphasizes access to healthcare, access to education, worker protection, redistribution, social safety nets. What socialism does well is reducing extremes. It prevents total economic collapse. It guarantees basic living conditions. It limits how far inequality can grow. This creates stability, but socialism also faces challenges. Central planning is complex. Incentives weaken when rewards are disconnected from effort. Efficiency often declines. Innovation can slow when risk is not rewarded. In simple terms, socialism prioritizes fairness first and accepts lower efficiency as the cost. Communism starts from a very simple observation. Economic inequality can become so extreme that society collapses. Where capitalism accepts inequality as a consequence of freedom, communism rejects it as a threat. Communism argues that private ownership of the means of production leads inevitably to exploitation. Factories, land, and resources generate value. Those who own them gain power. Those who work them remain dependent. Over time, wealth concentrates. Power follows wealth, and society divides into classes with opposing interests. Communism proposes a radical solution: no private ownership of productive assets. Everything belongs to the collective. Production is organized for need, not profit. In theory, this removes class conflict. If no one owns more than anyone else, no one can dominate. Communism promises economic equality, elimination of social classes, universal access to resources, a society without exploitation. What communism does well is diagnosing inequality. It clearly identifies how power accumulates. It exposes how economic systems shape social hierarchies. It highlights structural injustice rather than individual failure. But communism struggles with execution. When ownership is collective, decision-making becomes centralized. Incentives weaken. Efficiency drops. Managing complex economies without price signals is extremely difficult. Innovation slows. Shortages appear. Historically, attempts to implement communism required strong central authority. That authority often replaced economic inequality with political repression. In simple terms, communism prioritizes equality so strongly that it risks sacrificing freedom. Fascism is often misunderstood as simply extreme nationalism. That is only part of the picture. Fascism is built around one core idea: the individual exists to serve the collective, embodied by the state. Unlike socialism or communism, fascism does not focus on economic equality. Unlike liberalism, it does not protect individual freedom. Fascism rejects both. It argues that societies decline when individuals become too focused on personal rights. Order, unity, and strength must come first. Fascism emphasizes absolute authority, obedience, hierarchy, discipline, national unity. The state is central. Opposition is seen as weakness. Pluralism is viewed as chaos. What fascism does well is mobilization. It creates strong collective identity. It unifies populations quickly. It channels frustration into purpose. In times of crisis, this can feel stabilizing, but the cost is severe. Individual rights disappear. Dissent is treated as betrayal. Power concentrates rapidly. Fascism requires enemies, internal or external. Without them, unity collapses. In practice, fascism trades freedom for order, and once freedom is gone, it rarely returns. In simple terms, fascism prioritizes strength first and sacrifices individual autonomy completely. Nationalism is one of the most misunderstood ideologies. It is often confused with racism, hatred, or aggression. At its core, nationalism is simpler than that. Nationalism is about prioritization. It argues that the nation should come before external interests. Political decisions should serve the nation first. Culture, identity, and sovereignty matter. Nationalism emerged in response to empires. People wanted self-determination. They wanted control over their own laws, borders, and future. Nationalism emphasizes national sovereignty, shared identity, cultural cohesion, political independence. What nationalism does well is creating solidarity. It binds people around a shared story. It strengthens social cohesion. It encourages collective responsibility within borders. This can be stabilizing. But nationalism has a fragile boundary. When identity becomes exclusion, nationalism turns inward. Minorities can become scapegoats. Outsiders become threats. Extreme nationalism defines itself by opposition rather than purpose. Nationalism works best when it protects identity without denying others theirs. In simple terms, nationalism prioritizes belonging first and risks division if unchecked. Anarchism. Anarchism is probably the most misunderstood ideology on this list. It is often associated with chaos, violence, or the absence of rules. That is not what anarchism actually argues. Anarchism rejects imposed authority, not organization. Anarchists question why power should be centralized at all. They argue that most authority exists to preserve itself, not to serve people. Anarchism proposes that communities can organize voluntarily, through cooperation, through mutual agreement, through local decision-making. Anarchism emphasizes autonomy, decentralization, voluntary cooperation, skepticism of power. What anarchism does well is challenging authority. It forces societies to justify power structures. It exposes how control often masquerades as protection. It reminds people that rules are created, not natural. But anarchism faces practical limits. Large-scale coordination is difficult without central authority. Enforcement relies on consensus. Conflicts lack final arbiters. In complex societies, pure anarchism struggles to scale. In simple terms, anarchism prioritizes freedom from authority and sacrifices centralized coordination. Ideologies are not moral absolutes. They are lenses. Each ideology focuses on a specific problem. Liberalism fears unchecked power. Conservatism fears reckless change. Capitalism fears inefficiency. Socialism fears inequality. Communism fears class domination. Fascism fears disorder. Nationalism fears loss of identity. Anarchism fears authority itself. Each solves one problem well. Each creates another. No ideology is complete on its own. No ideology is neutral. Understanding ideologies is not about choosing sides. It is about seeing trade-offs clearly. The goal is not agreement. The goal is clarity. Explaining things simply means seeing what each idea protects and what it is willing to sacrifice. That is how confusion turns into understanding. Explaining things simply.